Hey YouTube, Downrange 45 here. What I'd like to talk to you about today is the size of semi-automatic self-defense handguns, where they've been, where they are today, maybe if you've got any comments about where you think they're headed. But we've got some interesting developments, and I just thought this might be a good subject to talk about. Let's think about what most people consider these days as a good personal defense weapon. A lot of people seem to be leaning toward the 380 auto. So let's start here, and again, as always, you can see all of my weapons are slide back, magazine out. None of these weapons are loaded. They're all safe, been thoroughly checked, and visually obvious that everything's safe. So here we've got three versions of a 380 auto. Let's start with this old classic, and this is a Walther PPK. Most of you know gun is safe, not loaded. Most of you are well aware that the Walther started out as a German-made weapon, and currently it is owned and manufactured by Smith & Wesson. A lot of people say that the quality has dropped, and that may or may not be the case. I'm not going to speak to that. This particular example we've got here to look at today is a factory engraved version. A presentation piece, but still completely functional, not a commemorative version, just a little fancier perhaps. And as most of you are aware, the reputation with the PPK is that this was, for most of the run of the film star series, James Bond, this was his weapon of choice, or at least chosen for him, for the character James Bond in the movies. 380 caliber. Well, interesting choice, to say the least. And we can take a look at the cartridge size of these weapons, and there's a kind of an interesting story about the James Bond series that I found out not too long ago, found very interesting. This is a current manufacturer 380 defense load. It's a hollow point. It's probably the most effective defense load currently on the market for the 380. This particular round is a 32 ACP, and you can see there's not a tremendous difference between these rounds, but there certainly is some difference. The 9mm clearly would be the better choice. And yet, when the James Bond series initially adopted the PPK, the first version of that, and actually throughout most of the series until just very recently, I think the most recent James Bond, probably maybe the one before that, I can't remember now, maybe it was Skyfall, but he does come back to the PPK after a brief hiatus, and it is in a 380 caliber, but the original PPKs adopted by James Bond were in the European 7.65 caliber, which is the equivalent of our 32 ACP. So this is the round that James Bond spent most of his career working with, and of course he had a license to kill. He must have been a pretty darn good shot. These days I'd rather have a little more firepower than a 32, and even the 380 leaves something to be desired. But that's the Walther, and another, in my opinion, maybe a little more elegant version of this same weapon. There's striking similarities. The SIG P232. This one fits my hand better. I shoot better with this weapon. I think it has quite frankly, more attractive lines to it. The older versions, maybe they were neck and neck as far as quality, accuracy, but for my money today, I'll take this SIG over the current versions of the Walther, manufactured these days by Smith & Wesson. And don't get me wrong, I have nothing against Smith & Wesson. I've got a bunch of them, primarily revolvers. But I lean more toward the SIG version of these, between these two, over the Walther. Now, here's a more modern, current day version, and speak of Smith & Wesson, here we go. This is the Bodyguard 380, and potent little gun, has a built-in laser. They all come with it. That's not an option. You see, it's even got a pulsing function to it. And if we want to start comparing sizes between these weapons, you can see that the Smith Bodyguard 380, in every respect, would be much easier to carry, concealed and comfortably, than the Walther, or certainly than the SIG. So if you can control it, then this would probably be the better choice if you're going to go 380. And that's an evolution we've seen. It's just a progression of what's happening in firearms today, the smaller, easier to carry versions. Now, let's look at some other calibers, some other possibilities. Here's my Glock 19, my primary carry gun, and 9mm. If we look at the size difference in some of the older 380s, here's the SIG and here's your PPK, there's not a lot of difference there. Now, of course, compare the Model 19 to the newer Bodyguard 380, and you've got a considerable difference there in dimensions in every respect. This is a Springfield Armory subcompact 9, totally safe, totally unloaded. This is the smallest 9mm I own. I'm not into any of the LC9s or any of those really, really small pocket 9mm. But this one is comparable in just about every dimension to the Model 19 Glock, except you can see it's considerably shorter. This is very comparable to like a Glock 26. Also a very manageable weapon, carrying concealment. And we compare this to something from the past. Again, that's not loaded, very safe. This is an old classic. This is an HK P7 in 9mm, and you can see it a narrower piece, not as wide and thick as, for instance, the Springfield Armory subcompact 9. A little longer, but I always thought this was a very elegant piece. I love this gun. It's very accurate, shoots very well, and originally designed back in the 70s for the German police. This is a civilian version. This is not a police refurb, but I love this weapon. Very nice weapon. But then we come full circle here to, now we're talking 45 ACP. This is a Springfield Armory SDS. This is their latest release. I hear they're coming out with one of these in a 9. But now we're up to 45 caliber, and here we are with the different cartridges: 32 ACP, 380, step up to 9mm, and now here we are with 45 ACP. And in this size of a package, let's go back all the way back to the 380. There's some differences there, but this gun is right in line with the older 380s. And if we go back to the smallest 9mm I have, this the Springfield Armory Sub 9, you can see it's thinner. You know, that was designed that way to be much thinner for carry purposes. But other than that, dimension-wise, they're really very, very similar. So this is probably, in my estimation, the pinnacle at this point of concealability and knockdown power. This would be the ultimate defense weapon for carry and to try to defend yourself with hopefully the least amount of rounds that we have on the market today. And you can see it's got the fiber optic front sight, and they've designed this weapon with the center of gravity so that the recoil is actually much more manageable. I would say it's probably every bit as manageable, if not more so, than this 9mm or the P7. It probably is going to be a little more difficult to handle than the 380s, although if I had my choice, I'd probably rather put 100, 200 rounds through this one than I would this little 380, because this thing in this small package is not that easy to handle either. So this is my presentation on where things are going with defense pistols. They keep getting smaller and more powerful. I hope that this has some benefit to you. If you have any comments, maybe you'd like to weigh in. Where do you think it's going next? They say the 9mm version of this is going to be the exact same frame. The holsters are even going to be interchangeable, but it'll be, I guess, a little more manageable and obviously greater firepower, more capacity. But what's going to be next? You know, where are we going next? Okay, please subscribe, leave your comments. I always appreciate hearing from you. Downrange 45, over and out.